How you doing, guys? Will here back for another fight card. In fact, we're going to do two fight cards. Next week in America, on a Wednesday night, we have a UFC fight night from Indianapolis, which leads into the big fights at the weekend for UFC 164 from Milwaukee. Both pretty solid cards. Some really great fights in both, especially 164. But there is some really good looking fights in Indianapolis as well. So we're going to go straight into that. I'm going to try and do these as quickly as I can. And go on to 164, the big event. But see, I'm going to go through the Indianapolis card and pick out who I think is going to win and how they're going to win. Just a couple of words on UFC on FS1 from last week. I think all the fans will admit that it was a great card. Some standout performances from Travis Browne after getting hurt by Alistair Overeem. Chael Sonnen submitting Shogun Rua. He looked very, very good. And then there was some notorious Conor McGregor who just dominated Max Holloway and looked very, very comfortable in doing so. And we'll move onwards and upwards with him. So a really good card. Great to see Travis Browne knocking out Overeem. It made my night. Staying up and watching it at 4 in the morning, stuff like that makes your night, especially when you're not a big fan of Alistair Overeem. So we're going to go into the card. It starts in the lightweight division. It's Roger Bowling against Abel Trujillo. Trujillo got absolutely fucking ragdolled last time out against Khabib, with the guy with the big long name, which I'm not going to enter because I could be here all night. And he was on the ground and he was bitching, he was moaning because he just couldn't advance his position, get back to his feet, and just got absolutely decimated for the whole fight. And it was great to watch because you can see if he comes back, he'll come back stronger from that. But he was just being a bitch in that fight and kind of giving up, and you never like to see that from fighters. Roger Bowling, he got knocked out by Anthony Njokuani. Fought in Strikeforce for quite a bit, but I'm going to go with Trujillo by I think he's going to knock him out. Second round knockout. Zach Cummins against Ben Alloway. Couple of tough fighters that have been tough smashes, and the tough in America. Alloway's kind of fought mostly in Europe and Australasia and stuff like that. Zach Cummins in Bellator and in the States. I'm going to go Ben Alloway by decision. James Head against Jason High. James Head, I'm not a big fan of at all. Jason High, the KC Bandit, I'm a fan of his. Go follow him on Twitter as well. He's coming off a tough loss to Eric Silva, but Eric Silva is one of the best in the welterweight division, and he will, I think, be fighting for belts in the near future as well. So I'm going to go Jason High by decision in that one as well. Next fight, we've got Darren Elkins against Tatsuya Hayoki. Hayoki's coming off a couple of losses. Last time out, he lost to Clay Guida, whereas Darren Elkins is coming off a win over, I think it's Antonio Carvalho. No, it's not. He lost to Chad Mendes. That was it. He got TKO'd by Chad Mendes last time out. I expect him to get back. I'm a big fan of Hayoki, but I don't think he really particularly likes travelling to the US. So I think Darren Elkins is going to get a decision victory, but I'm really hoping for a Hayoki submission here. Next up, we've got Justin Edwards against Brandon Thatch. First fight in the UFC for Brandon Thatch. I think his biggest win outside in the other promotions is that he beat James Pulver a while back. Justin Edwards is coming off a really, really nice performance over Josh Neer. He caught him in a submission and a guillotine choke after about 45 seconds and won the fight. So I'm going to go Justin Edwards by submission. Next up, we've got Dylan Andrews against Papi Abadi. Abadi's from Sweden. Still don't know why he's in the UFC. Whereas Dylan Andrews is coming off tough from last year. Quite a likeable guy, a guy who he seems to fight for his family, and guys like that you've got to give props to guys like that. So I'm going to go Dylan Andrews. I think he's going to knock out Abadi in the first or second round. Not going to pick around. I think he will knock him out though. Next up is a really good fight. Takema Sagaki against Eric Perez. Eric Perez, I think, is the real deal, and he's going to be fighting for a title in the next 18 months. And he just adds to the bantamweight division, which is really, really strong at the minute. After Michael McDonald, somebody I forgot to mention from the weekend past, in Uriah Faber. He's going to put himself up in there with the next two fights, I think. I think he will submit can knock him out, Mizugaki, and he can submit Mizugaki. I think he's going to catch him and get him to the ground, and then he's going to submit him. And early on, I think first round submission from Eric Perez. On the middleweight for the main card, it's Brad Tavares against Bubba McDaniel. Brad Tavares all day. He's fighting well at the minute, and Bubba McDaniel, I thought on Tough, was an absolute pussy, bitching out. He thought the whole world was against him, that kind of stuff, and he was just, everybody's had a hard time. A lot of people have had a hard time in the sport getting to where they're at, but he just seemed to kind of whinge and bitch, and I didn't really like that. But he won his last fight, so I can't say anything about it. But I like Brad Tavares by kind of any way he wants in this. I think he can knock him out, or he might get an easy decision, which he might do, but I think he will knock him out in the second. Next up, we've got a couple of tough winners in Court McGee against Robert Whittaker. Whittaker looked very impressive in his knockout of Colton Smith last time out, who was another tough winner. Court McGee's, he looks good down at welterweight, coming down from middleweight. He'll be very strong at the weight as well. This could be a close fight, but I think Court McGee's kind of octagon experience is going to come into it, and he's grappling. I think he'll get him down. He'll get an easy decision all night long. The last tough winner, Kelvin Gastelum, who beat Uriah Hall in the final, is against Brian Melancon here. Melancon looked really, really dangerous, and he got a really big win last time out in his UFC debut. He knocked out Seth Brzezinski at UFC 162, and he's coming in short notice in this fight after Paulo Thiago got ruled out through injury. Gastelum, a great grappler, get you to the ground. He's very gritty. He'll fight hard down there. But I just like Melancon. I think he can knock him out here. I'm going to go Brian Melancon by TKO in the third. Then we've got a bizarre fight at lightweight in the co-main event. Donald Cowboy Cerrone against Rafael dos Anjos. Cerrone's always in exciting fights, whether he loses or whether he wins. He's coming off he wasn't saying that the last time out he wasn't great against KJ Nunes. Before that he lost to Pettis, but there was fights with Melvin Gillard. That was a great knockout, and he's had his fight with Nate Diaz, and wins over Jeremy Stevens and Dennis Siver, Charles Oliveira, and then you could go back to his WEC days where he fought some of the best. He fought Jamie Varner, and he fought Benson Henderson a couple of times as well. Dos Anjos is a guy who's on a roll at the minute, and he's a very, very, very talented guy who causes a lot of problems. He's good on his feet. You go to the ground with him, he's very tough. I just think that Donald Cerrone is good everywhere, and he can negate what Dos Anjos has for him. I think he's better on the feet, and I think he can match him on the ground as well. Dos Anjos is coming off wins over Shalarus, Njokuani, Bocek, and then a great decision victory over Evan Dunham. So I'm going to go Donald Cerrone by, I think he could knock him out, and I think he'll do it in the second. Then in the main event, we've got Carlos Condit against Martin Kampmann in a rematch from years back. I think Condit's going to win the fight. I think he's came along the most out of the two fighters since the last fought. Martin Kampmann's very dangerous everywhere. He's dangerous on his feet, very good striker. You go to the ground with him, he's very dangerous as well. He can catch something like he did against Thiago Alves, where he was getting dominated for about two and a half rounds. Thiago Alves stupidly went for a takedown and he caught him in a choke and choked him out. Carlos Condit says he's fought the best. Nick Diaz, Johnny Hendricks, GSP, and never been taken out. Great fight with Johnny Hendricks last time out. So I just think Carlos Condit can win this fight, and I think he can do it in different ways. I think he can knock out Kampmann. I think he can submit him. But I'm going to go with knockout in the fourth round in this one. So that's Indianapolis out the way. So we're going to move on to UFC 164 from the Bradley Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where, as I said earlier, Anthony Pettis challenges Benson Henderson for the UFC lightweight championship in a rematch of the WEC championship match from years ago, which featured the ninja kick off the cage, which more or less won Pettis the fight and became the last ever WEC lightweight champion as well against Benson Henderson. So we're going to go, but the card is stacked. There's a lot of great fights, and I've got a couple of my favourites on this card as well. We start down at the bottom. We've got Jared Hammond coming off a pretty devastating loss to Michael Kuiper, where he was just getting battered and beat up, and he kept going, never stopped. until eventually he did get stopped. He's against Marcus Sillenband here, who's been in the UFC a couple times. I think he's won one, lost one, I think. But I'm going to go Jared Hammond by decision in this fight. Next up, we've got Ryan Couture against Al Iaquinta. Iaquinta is replacing Brady Quinn, who fell out through injury. He hasn't fought since June last year when he lost to Michael Chiesa, whenever it was. I think he's had injury problems as well, so not great. And Ryan Couture's got his second fight in the UFC after getting knocked out by Ross Pearson, which was a tough fight to go into the UFC for, facing your first fight. But I'm going to go Al Iaquinta by decision. In the heavyweight division, with Saul Palale against Nikita Krylov. Palale, he was in the UFC, I think it was UFC 79, way back in December 2006. So he's been in the UFC. He lost that fight to Eddie Sanchez, got knocked out. Since he's left the UFC, he's been very, very, very solid out there winning titles, beating some fighters. Coming off a win over Sean McCorkle, and before that, he's got a win against one of the best ever in the great Bob Sapp. So yeah, Krylov, I think he's undefeated, 14-0. He may be 14-1. I maybe misread that. But he's very dangerous on his feet, and when you go to the ground with this guy, as most of the kind of Eastern European guys are from the Ukraine and Russia, they're very, very, very good grapplers. And this guy's he's got more submission wins than knockouts. He's got 5 knockouts to I think it's 9 submissions. So I'm going to go White Krylov by submission as well. In the third, I think he'll catch him late again. Next up, we've got Chico Camus against Kyung Ho Kang. Kang fought in the card Stan and Vanderlei and won that fight there. Chico Camus is coming off I think he's coming off a win in his last fight. He's a Rufus Sport fighter, so he's going to get a lot of support because we're in Milwaukee here. He's coming off a submission loss to Dustin Kimura, who looked unbelievable that night. I thought he was a really talented kid that comes out of Hawaii. We'll see him at UFC 165 as well. I like Chico Camus here by decision, just because he's in his hometown. So I'm going to go Chico Camus by decision here. Pascal Kraus, another Rufus Sport fighter against Hyung-Gyu Lim. Lim's coming off the knockout, the knee knockout of Marcelo Gomares away back in Japan for Vanderlei against Stan. Tough fight this. It's depending on how the Koreans can adapt over in America. I think I like Pascal Kraus again by decision. I think there's going to be a few decisions in this. Next up, we've got the flyweights. We've got Luis Gaudino against Tim Elliott. Gaudino, who was on the Ultimate Fighter a couple of years back, hasn't fought in about a year. His last fight was a really good fight, I remember, against John Lineker, and he won by submission, I think it was. And he's against a very, very good opponent here in Tim Elliott, who is coming off a win over Jared Papazian. Before that, he lost to John Dodson. This is a tough fight to call here. I think I'm going to go Luis Gaudino by a split decision in this one. It's going to be close though. It'll be a great fight, I think. And then to kind of highlight the Fox Sports 1 card in the prelims, it's Jamie Varner against Gleison Tibau. Now, Tibau's a veteran, fights all the time. I think he won his last fight. It was in Brazil, if I remember correctly, against John Cholish. Before that, he lost to Evan Dunham. So he kind of wins one and loses one. And I fully expect this here against Jamie Varner, who's coming off a win, I think, over Melvin Gillard as well. So I'm going to go, I think Jamie Varner, I think it's another decision. I think they're all going to be decisions on the undercard. And then we get to the main card. Now, I love this main card, except for one fight. I'm not big on the Rothwell Vera fight, but the other fights in this card are really, really solid. And we're going to the featherweight division to start the night off. It was one of my favourites. Dustin the Diamond Poirier, one of the best guys. I think he's just a great guy. You follow him on Twitter. He's a really cool kid. Love his shots. I think he's got the best shots in MMA. If I'm being honest, the Head Rush do a great job with it, and he's against a Rufus Sport fighter, and Eric Koch here is coming off a devastating loss to Ricardo Lamas last time out. Both fighters are very, very talented. I think this fight's going to be very, very close. I think either of them can. I don't think Koch can knock out Poirier. I think Poirier can knock out Koch. I think Poirier can submit Coke, and he may be able to kind of hurt Coke on the Poirier on the ground, but there's no way I'm going to pick against Dustin Poirier here. Throw your diamonds up for Poirier. I'm going to go Dustin Poirier by knockout late in the third. There we go. I hope he does it because I'm a big fan of Dustin Poirier. I hope he goes on and gets his title shot in the next couple of years. Next up, we've got the heavyweight division. It's Ben Rothwell against Brandon Vera. Why this is on the main card, I have no idea. Not a big fan of this fight at all. Ben Rothwell coming off a loss to Gabriel Gonzaga. Brandon Vera moving back up to heavyweight where he kind of started his UFC career years back. And who has Brandon Vera really beat since like UFC? I think it was 102 or something against Krzysztof Sosinski. So I think Brandon Vera will win. I think his striking's going to be able to kind of hit him. He's got quite a good reach on him as well, so I think he's going to hit, get out, and I think he can knock out Rothwell, and I think he'll do that in the second. So Brandon Vera by knockout. Next up, featherweight division. We have Chad Money Mendez against Clay Guida. Now, Clay Guida is one of the most exciting fighters he was. His last couple of fights have been pretty boring. His game plans kind of went to kind of running, and it doesn't suit him at all. He won against Taoki last time out. Chad Mendez is on a tear. Beat Dan Elkins last time. He's by far the number 2 in that division, and I think he can hurt Clay Guida anywhere here. I think he can catch him, put him on his backside, and beat him up. I think he could submit him as well. But I think he's shown his knockout power in these fights, and I think he'll do it again. I think he can knock out Clay Guida, and I think he could do it late in the third as well. So I'm going to go by Chad Mendez, knockout, third round. Co-main event, Frank Mir against Josh Barnett. This is a great fight. Such a great fight. This should have happened years ago if Josh Barnett was in the UFC. He's faced the best. He was a former UFC champion, went to Strikeforce, did his business over there, beat great fighters, Karatonov and stuff over there. Just one of the best heavyweights around. He had his drugs problems back in the day, but he is a great fighter. Frank Mir, we know what he can do. He's pretty devastating. He can be devastating on his feet when he wants to be. You don't go to the ground with Frank Mir. But I think Josh Barnett is of the type where he can go to the ground and he can definitely handle himself down there on the ground as well. It's just this is a great fight. I think Josh Barnett will take him. He will go to the ground with Frank Mir. If he gets on top of Frank Mir, I think he'll pound him out. He's got a great kind of top game. But Frank Mir, it's when you go to the ground, it's his domain, and he can pull off limbs from a lot of places like he did with Brock Lesnar. I know it was Brock Lesnar, but we've seen it with Nogueira where he was rolling with him and he was just picking, and then he managed to get his arm and snap his arm, and you just don't really want to go to the ground. But if Barnett stands on the feet, I think he could beat him on the feet as well. But I think Barnett will take him to the ground, and we'll see how good Frank Mir really is. Tough fight to pick. This gets a toss up for me, but I'm going to go for Josh Barnett by decision in this fight. And then the main event of the card is Benson Henderson defending his title again against Anthony Pettis. Now I'm pumped for this. Anthony Pettis is probably the most exciting fighter in the UFC. He pulls out stuff. He does stuff that not many people see. See what he did against Donald Cerrone. He was throwing knees off the cage and he was capoeira kicks, and he managed to catch him with a great body shot which take him out. And he was supposed to fight Aldo, which I was bummed about when he pulled out. But then he's back in his hometown here fighting Benson Henderson in rematch of the WEC match a few years back, which was a great fight over 5 rounds, very close. And I fully expect this to be the same as well. But I still think Anthony Pettis, he's one of my favourites. I still think he's got a bit more than what Benson Henderson has, and I think out of the two of them he can stop Anthony Pettis. I think if Henderson, he's got some 6 submissions when you get down there. He's got a tough choke in him, but I think Anthony Pettis can knock Benson Henderson out. It's never really been done before, but I think Anthony Pettis could be the first time to do it. It's in his hometown here. He's going to be pumped. He's going to be jacked for it. And I like Anthony Showtime Pettis by a late knockout in this fight. If not, I think it'll be very close, maybe a split decision. but it's going to be a great fight. I love the main card. I just love the card for this. I think it's got fireworks written all over it. Hopefully the preliminary card, sorry, I went for all decisions. Hopefully they don't go to that. But that's my pick for the main event. It's Anthony Showtime Pettis, one of my favourites as well. So just hope he pulls it out and we'll see a new kind of era in the lightweight division. So that's my picks. Like the video, share the video if you can. Let's see if we can get some more viewers and stuff like that as well. And then we're back for a UFC fight night again. I think we're back in Brazil for Glover Teixeira against Ryan Bader on September the 4th. So yeah, come follow me on Twitter about Bilba7MMA. Thank you for watching. Tell me your picks as well. You can always come and speak to me on there and tell me your picks. I just want you to take care. Enjoy the 2 fight cards, great fight cards next week from America. And peace.